Welcome back to the channel. Let's have a very quick look at the Premier League games we'll be seeing this weekend. Now, this is the weekend between two Champions League fixtures. We already saw the first leg of the round of 16 of the Champions League, and in that particular fixture, a lot of Premier League teams disgraced themselves. I already spoke all about it in a video that lasted for about 15 minutes or thereabouts on the channel. If you look into that, you'll see the video. But now, before we head into the next leg of that particular competition to see if any of those Premier League teams will make it to the next round, we have a game in between, and that is what we are here to talk about. A weekend fixture in the Premier League, a whole lot of them. Now, we could easily look into all the games, but I decided that no, let's just focus on the games that truly matter. And the games that really matter has to be the games involving the teams that we see in European competition. So each of those 6 teams playing in the Champions League will look into their Premier League games this weekend and quickly talk about the level of jeopardy that is involved in the game, maybe our expectations from them in the game, and perhaps a little prediction wouldn't hurt too. And like I said, this is going to be a very quick video. We'll start from the game between Arsenal at home with Everton. Arsenal, they failed to get the job done in the midweek against Leverkusen. In fact, some would even say that they are lucky to get away with a draw. So there is so much to play for in the next round of the game. But before they get into that, they also have a title to win in the Premier League. Currently, they are 7 points ahead of Manchester City. But bear in mind, Man City have a game in hand. So with that game in hand, including a game that they will still have to play against each other, that basically means that Arsenal cannot afford to drop points here. Some people are saying that a draw would count as a good result. I don't believe that. I think they need to go for the win. They need to go for the win. And Everton, as we know it, can be a boogie team sometimes, but not for Arsenal. So in a game like this, Arsenal need the win for the sake of their title race. And they also need a win with multiple goals, because in the midweek, their inability to create clear-cut chances affected them massively. So they need that win. They need to reassure their fans that, yeah, what happened then is not going to happen again. If they could, most importantly, use the first half to score a whole lot of goals, then in the second half they can afford to rest a couple of players. And one thing I need to mention, one of the things that Arsenal have working in their favor this season is their squad depth. We've been talking about it throughout the season. This is the time for them to put it to test. This is the time for them to prove that, yeah, when we talk about squad depth, we actually have a solid squad depth. So what is your expectation for the game? Do you think Arsenal is going to get the win? The logical part of me is telling me that Arsenal and Mikel Arteta surely has to get the win here. They would fight for the win. But the sentimental part of me as a Liverpool fan, I don't want to see them get that win. But that's by the way. Now, the next game we are looking into is a game between Chelsea and Newcastle United. It's going to be a very tough game. I mean, is it even going to be a tough game? The game standalone is meant to be tough, but considering where they are in European competition, it may end up being an easier game for Chelsea. Now listen, Chelsea is not in the best form currently. They've not been fully convincing for the most part of the season. But Chelsea is fighting for the top 5 qualification. They need to secure a spot in the Champions League. In fact, it is more preferable for them to secure top 4 or top 5 this season. So I'm very sure that they will be fully focused on turning things around now. In their last 2 games, they've not been impressive. Remember, their last 2 games, they played against Wrexham. Wrexham were reduced to 10 men, and they were still able to push Chelsea to the 190th minute. The game after that is the game against PSG. Embarrassing results. 5-2 defeat. That's what they suffered in that game. So they are going to walk into the next fixture with 3 goals deficit against PSG. What are their chances? We'll talk about all that when we do a preview for the Champions League game. But for this particular one, Chelsea, has to be fully focused on this, because their chances of securing the next spot, the chances of qualifying for the next round of the Champions League from the round of 16 they are currently in is very low. With it being this low, they have to fully focus on securing top 5 qualification. On the side of Newcastle, their previous game against Barcelona, I was very impressed with their performance. They used their physicality to their advantage. They cut off Barcelona from holding onto the ball, and they were able to score the first goal. In fact, they were very close to sealing the win on that point, on that particular game, but they just couldn't get it done. It took a last kick of the ball for Barcelona to score an equalizer. So there is so much to play for in the next round. And currently, Newcastle is not fighting for top 5 qualification. They are also not in a relegation battle. They are just sitting at the mid-table in the league. So they can afford to just come into this game, rest a whole lot of their players, and focus on the game ahead. And that is why when I look at this game, the job is left for Chelsea. It is left for them to get the job done in this regard. And from there, we'll move over to the next game, West Ham versus Manchester City. Embarrassing. We saw a very embarrassing performance from Manchester City in the midweek against Real Madrid. Of course, Real Madrid is Real Madrid when you talk of European competition. As far as Real Madrid is up there, you expect them to grind out a result, but they didn't have to grind out a result against Manchester City. Manchester City made the job too easy for them, and I'm very worried about Pep Guardiola, because this could end up being his last season as the manager of Manchester City, and I don't think he ever thought that he could be finishing his last season without winning any silverware. He would fight, he would try to get a bounce back in that particular game, but they have 3 goals disadvantage. It's never something to be taken for granted. And this weekend, they are up against a West Ham that is fighting so hard to escape relegation. So that is one to watch out for. That is a game to watch out for. How is Pep going to prepare his squad? Is he going to go strong for this game and basically write off the next game against Real Madrid? Or would he just try to balance things out, put up a team that is good enough to at the very least secure a draw? You would have to tell me about that. You would have to tell me, if you were in Pep Guardiola's shoes, what would you do? How would you handle that situation? What do we expect from this particular game? It's going to be tough. Of course, it's going to be tough. West Ham and Manchester City. A part of me is pushing for a win. Surely they have to go for the win here, because they still have a chance of turning things around against Arsenal in the league. The problem with Manchester City this season is just about the level of inconsistency we've seen from them. Manchester City fans must be already depressed with the level of inconsistency they are seeing from their squad. It is unacceptable, and the fact that they've been inconsistent is one of the reasons why I'm thinking that they may just not be good enough to push against Arsenal in the league. But from where we are standing, let's use our football brain. One thing we know is that they have higher chances of getting something positive in the Premier League than where they are currently standing in the Champions League. Of course, Arsenal fans wouldn't want to hear anything about this, but this weekend is a very important one. If Arsenal fail to pick up a win, then you can guarantee that Manchester City is going to push to get that win and increase their chances of getting closer to Arsenal on the table. Now we'll move over to the next game. I said that we are going to be talking about teams in the Champions League, but here I am about to talk about Manchester United and Aston Villa. You know that none of them are in the Champions League, but Man United is still a big team. Man United is currently fighting for a top 4, top 5 qualification. As for Aston Villa, interestingly, yes, Aston Villa has not been decent this year. The first half of the season, they were impressive, very impressive. In fact, some people were saying, could they challenge for the title? But they messed things up for themselves. Currently, we are sure they are not challenging for the title. But the question we are now asking is, can they even qualify for the Champions League next season? So that is something they have to take very seriously. The only disadvantage they could have going into this game, apart from the fact that they've been very poor in the league throughout this season, has to do with them playing in midweek. They played in the Europa League midweek. Yes, a game that they ended up winning 1-0. As for Manchester United, they've been resting. They had a whole week of rest. So Aston Villa players could be fatigued. They would have to rest a couple of players ahead of another midweek fixture that is on the way. As for Manchester United, they've had all the rest they need, and they need to come in and get a result here. Funny enough, both Aston Villa and Manchester United are on the same points in the league. They share the same points on the league table, but this is the weekend where Manchester United have to secure 3 points advantage ahead of Aston Villa. Is a pity, because Aston Villa we are very close to qualifying for Europe last season. I think it was on the final game day that they missed out on that qualification. We are seeing it again this season. Many of their fans back in January, the first week of January, would have been convinced that they are surely going for the Champions League next season. But from where it is standing, they are not sure of it happening. Now, the last game of the game week, the supposedly biggest game of the game week, the Super Sunday fixture, that's going to be the game between Liverpool and Tottenham Hotspur. Do we have any expectations from this game? Do we even have any expectations from this game? Tottenham Hotspur has been the worst team in the Premier League this year. They are very close to getting relegated. But what are the positives we can even say about Liverpool? On the side of Liverpool, they've been very inconsistent. The fans are not pleased with the manager, and that is why we are very concerned about what could happen in this particular game. Like I said, I'm a Liverpool fan, and I'm not very confident about us going into this game. But one thing I will say for certain is that Tottenham Hotspur is in the worst possible position. Just in the midweek, they got slapped up 5-2 by Atletico Madrid, and they will still have to play against Atletico Madrid again. Now, I don't think they are going to be paying much attention to that second leg, because they are as good as knocked out of the competition. Currently, what they are fighting for is to make sure they don't get relegated. I mean, just think about Tottenham getting relegated. That's just insane. It is insane. It's not something you see happen every day, but it is very close to happening. But nonetheless, they have a lot of injuries. Their senior centre backs are going to miss the game against Liverpool. Their coach is struggling. Their fans are basically disconnected from the club. A lot of things are not working in their favor. And to be fair, so much is also not working in Liverpool's favor, although it is due to their own doing. But in a game like this, where two poor teams are coming to fight against each other, I think the odds are slightly in favor of Liverpool, and they surely have to get the job done. Bearing in mind that after this game, they still have a very serious midweek game coming up against Galatasaray. So let's see how they will perform on this one. And that's where we'll be wrapping it up on this one. So remember to stay in touch with us on the channel. Like, follow, leave your comments, subscribe, do all the fancy things you guys do on YouTube. A lot more stuff on the way.